of Education meeting. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome back. Hope you and your families had a very nice Thanksgiving break. We'll begin as we usually do with our administrative remarks, and how about Ms. Culligan?
Good evening.
Good evening.
An update on the assistant principal position at the high school. We have received 119 applications to date. The position closes on Thursday, so we'll start screening applications on Friday. Michelle and I met with a representative from SUNY New Paltz today to discuss taking secondary students for fieldwork and student teaching placements. Their program is that the students would be placed here for 3 semesters. 2 semesters would be field work, and the 3rd semester would be the student teaching placement. And the field work, they would only be here like half a day a week. It's to get them acclimated to the environment and to get into the classroom itself. So we're talking about this, and we're going to talk to the principals about it, because this would help the district develop a pipeline for hard-to-fill secondary positions.
You bet.
And that concludes my report.
Thank you so much. And Mr. Carlson, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Good evening. Just want to provide an update on the athletic fields repair. Insight Engineering, our civil engineers, they have a scheduled meeting with the Department of Environmental Protection on December 12th to review the proposed JFK paving and also the athletic field repairs. And they're going to request guidance developing the stormwater pollution prevention plan that's required for both DEP and New York State DEC, Department of Environmental Conservation. And as you know, there's a 3rd regulatory agency involved in this, and that's the State Education Department. So tonight, agenda item C6 is a resolution to declare the repair of the athletic fields an emergency project.
Right.
And that should streamline the approval process for SEP.
That'd be helpful.
On Thursday, November 30th at 6:30, the Athletic Fields Renovation Committee will be meeting, and they're going to review the initial scope of work that was originally established back in August of 2015 when this work was first contemplated. As you know, we were unable to move forward because of the limitations that DEP imposes on the disturbance limits. Now with the latest report from our insurance company, NYSER, we're actually taking a different approach. The committee's recommendations will be communicated to KG&D, or architects, and also Insight Engineering for incorporation into their revised plans, and follow-up meetings will occur throughout this winter and spring. In the meantime, Mr. Berardo, with the assistance of Section 1 Athletics Association, is identifying potential sites to host our baseball and softball games this spring. I'll ask Mr. Berardo to give us a quick update.
Sure. Last Friday before Thanksgiving, Mr. Carlson, Mr. Winch, and I took a little tour of some of the Southeast recreation facilities, just assessing really the length of home plate to the outfield fences, and then we kind of got some clarification from some state officials, associations, New York State Public High School Athletic Association, the proper distances, and now we're in the process of surveying some of my colleagues in Section 1 to see what their outfield fence from home plate distance-wise are, and then we're going to make a decision as to what way to proceed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
An update for the JFK ribbon-cutting ceremony. As we all know, there are still some punch list items that still need to be resolved, and that's difficult with any construction project, and we saw that even with CV Star in the high school. But we'd like to extend an invitation to the community to join us for the ribbon cutting, which is scheduled for Monday, December 11th at 5:30, followed by the Board of Ed meeting at the Brewster High School Innovation Learning Center at 6:30. A quick budget update. We've been watching the Consumer Price Index trending toward, or above, I should say, 2% for 2017, which is a good thing. So this is actually the only component of the tax cap for which it gets its name as a 2% tax cap.
Right.
And for the past 4 years, 2% has never entered into the formula. This year, actually, it appears to be like that 2% is actually going to be the number that we use. So the Consumer Price Index is trending above 2%. And as we know, it's the lesser of CPI or 2%, so in this case it will actually be 2% expected for 2018-19. We'll monitor that for the past 2 months. And one last note, the district-wide wellness committee will be meeting tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. headed by Kathy Ash, our Director of Child Nutrition Services. And that concludes my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Carlson. I appreciate that. I'll be coming back to my comments, what's happening with the tax bill down in Washington and the effect here in New York State. Okay, Ms. Gosh, how are you doing?
Doing well, thank you. Our first mental health newsletter, Brewster Cares, has been published. It highlights some of the great work that's going on in the buildings in terms of PBIS. It offers some resources and supports, especially for dealing with what some people consider a stressful time of year that we're in right now. It is a way for us to communicate some of the good work that's going on across the system. So I'd like to thank Mrs. Helga Cluzet and Mr. Giancarlo Mejia, who are our mental health counselors, as well as our building administrators for putting this information together and helping to make this happen. Our goal is to produce this newsletter quarterly, so we hope that you find it informative and useful. And second, Brewster is a member of the Regional STEAM Committee. So it's hosted by Dr. Lynn Allen out of Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES. So the committee consists of a small group of districts that wanted to get together to pool resources, to talk about common opportunities that are going on, and really to discuss what is going on in our district, in our districts, I should say. So what was interesting is that each of us brought to the table a different perspective on what STEAM is and what it looks like, which is invaluable for us because it helps us sort of assess where we are in terms of region and to think about what the next steps are. So I was very happy to report on all the work that we're doing with Project Lead the Way and our art maker spaces and with our robotics offerings, our after-school K-5 offerings for students as well as the everyday pedagogy that we see in terms of asking students to create and innovate. So we're excited to continue to work with this group and to take our STEAM level K-12 to up the next step, I should say.
Great, thank you. And Dr. Henning, how are you?
Good evening, Dr. Gamble, Board Trustees. I hope you all had a wonderful Thanksgiving. Now it's four weeks to the next, big event. So
Yep.
There are lots of exciting concerts and other events. So I'm sure we'll see many of you there. As Ms. Gosh did mention her role in the creation of the mental health newsletter, it's a little different. It's a little different from the other two newsletters. The one, Victor being involved in both of them, that was his background music he was playing because he knows. So his timing is a little off. So Victor and Kathy Ash released the first child nutrition newsletter, which provides lots of healthy, information that's healthy as well as information about how the child nutrition program is really organizing itself to offer a great deal more offerings to children and to do that in ways that are appealing. And we've seen a number of those. I've been at a number of these senior interviews where we've seen some of the choices that the students enjoy. I haven't seen the pizza sticks yet, the pizza crunchy sticks, which are a popular item, but I appreciate that work. And again, it's just another way for us to communicate to our community what we're doing. The other newsletter that Victor is responsible for is in collaboration with Andy is the safety newsletter, which again provides a lot of healthy information or helpful information that our parents need to know about the differences between lockouts, lockdowns, and those kinds of things. So when parents hear those references to those, they don't come to conclusions that perhaps something is wrong. So I appreciate that, and you'll see many more of those. And our building leaders and our directors are also looking at ways to use the newsletters to help us to expedite, communicating certain information rather than having our communities look through our website, which is one source, but it can be a little overwhelming to look at a website. So this is a way to push out information that's much more targeted and focused. There was a little hiccup on the newsletter. The reason why we're using Constant Contact, which again is a great tool, is that we can analyze what our communities are actually reading in the newsletter. How about that? Yeah. That we can target certain articles or certain topics and eliminate other things so that it provides the analytics. And it also we're using Putnam BOCES to disseminate the newsletter because it saves us on licensing fees. Like, we don't have to purchase the license to do it. So that's one of the other services that BOCES provides, which we can benefit from, so we really appreciate that. Our strategic coherence planning team participated in a learning walk on November 21st, so we had 45 teachers and administrators, and both Ms. Nielsen and Ms. Cacao serve on that committee and were part of that learning walk. And a learning walk is really an opportunity for educators to get more data about what's actually going on in the classroom. So rather than looking at test scores or looking at other measures, you can look directly at instruction and get a sense. In our case, the focus question for this group was, what does the integration of our 5 strategic coherence planning goals or skills look like in the classroom? What does it look like in curriculum, assessment, and the learning environment? And we got to distill some of that information, and we'll come back again this month, or December, I should say, to further analyze that information and be able to sort of share that, have our building principals share that with the teams in the building so that they can process that and make sense of that, and also determine what else we could do at this stage so that we are continuing to further integrate those skills and make sure that everyone's aware of those definitions and how that looks at the buildings, and it looks differently. And I think the team is interested in going on another walk in the spring. We are working on dates for the board to participate in a field trip, the Project Lead the Way STEM field trip to the 3 schools. Each year, as you know, we've added more Project Lead the Way courses. Project Lead the Way is not the only STEM curriculum, so you will be seeing other efforts at having us have a really rigorous STEM presence in the district at the K-12 level. You may not know that the comptroller's office conducts technology audits. Did you know that? Do you know the day that they were really interested in Cyber Monday? You know why they were interested in Cyber Monday? They wanted to look at the amount of time school districts were spending, staff shopping, and what that information would become available in a very embarrassing audit, where they're calculating the amount of time lost, and they're calculating the cost of that time. So lots of districts of the region were sending information around, and thanks to Jim Trelawney, sent out a very nice, pleasant email that basically focus more on how a depletion. If we are shopping during our lunch and our break, that we're drawing from the same source of bandwidth. And so if we are using our phones, even if you're using your personal device, you're functioning on the network.
Right.
So most people don't realize that. So you're not like in someplace else when you're dealing with your phone, when you're in the school district. So I think that we avoided any kind of comptroller net, dragnet activity, but that's what the comptroller's office is involved in. I want to thank the PBIS team at Brewster High School. Ms. Hoyler and that wonderful team that they have there brought in a magnetic speaker, Dr. Mikey Fallon, who talked about belonging and issues that young people have as they struggle. So there were 2 different assemblies so that every high school student was able to see that. And that's someone that perhaps we can bring back and have our PTAs to sponsor for our community so that they can actually experience that as well. There were other PBIS activities going on in the other 3 buildings, so we use that opportunity because some of our children are going to be away from some of the people who they depend upon a great deal during the course of the school day. And we wanted to send them off with some good tools and some assurances that we'll be right back here when they come back on Monday, to get through the rest of the year. The Career Skills Program at the high school, I want to thank Joshua, Liz, and Amy, and Sarah Barnes, and that whole team for having just an amazing Thanksgiving dinner that group of students planned, they made the placemats and the settings, they organized, they invited, and they ate. And it was just a wonderful celebration of a real authentic learning experience that our students need, and that's what that program is supposed to provide, is real life experiences that help them to be independent citizens when they leave the school system. So bravo to us, bravo to them for making that happen. We're continuing to interview groups of seniors. Ms. Hoyler and I met with the 5 wonderful seniors. They actually are young adults. When you're talking to them, you're no longer talking to a student. And they really have sort of crossed over the threshold, and they're saying some amazing things that some of which we should be very proud of. And they talk about things that they're going to remember and their fondest memories, and they are around athletic events. They're around times in which they heard their names on a PA system, being congratulated for something. That these are their fondest memories. And they talk about, wishing that they didn't stress out as much about grades. As they look back over the 13 years that they spent in the school system, and all of them that we've interviewed so far, we have a ton more to go, probably about 270 more. They talk about, they were either Garden Street or JFK, and they talk about, their experience in sort of the most melancholy but delightful ways, and they have lots of information to share with us, and I'm sure it's going to be very helpful, and you'll be hearing more about this. And I'm really happy that we have the opportunity to do that. I want to thank Mr. Berardo for another wonderful sports awards program on November 15th, where we got a chance to celebrate the athletic achievements of our various students. Ms. Hoyler, Mr. Clark, and I met with Nora Slavinsky, who's the director of the Community Relations at Arms Acres, which is another partner in the district. There are a whole array of services available to children as well as parents, and these are children and parents who are struggling with substance abuse-related issues. So we're going to invite them in. Perhaps one of the venues will be freshman orientation, so we can introduce parents to those services, as well as looking at how to integrate them into sixth grade orientation. Because if children don't hit the high school and suddenly have these problems, they start much earlier. We held a luncheon yesterday, again thanks to Ms. Gosh, and we invited our partners, Doreen Lockwood and Kristen McConnell, who from the Putnam Coalition of Communities That Care. Every 2 years they survey our students in grades 8 through 12, again around certain risky behaviors. And we get to learn, what it is that we should be focused on, rather than sort of speculating or making, drawing conclusions that are not substantiated. So we had an opportunity, all the administrators, as well as the principals, as well as our school counselors, social workers, and psychologists, to get an update on the latest data, which was from 2016. The next administration will be in 2018, and we hope that we get more participation. Interestingly enough, it looks like there was a decline or drop off in participation. And the feeling was that perhaps the opt-out movement caught up, was sort of part of that decision, for students not to participate. That's a speculation. We don't know that for a fact. But hopefully we do get most students participating, because that's important information for us to have. And finally, I want to thank the high school for their most recent edition of their facts. Again, another authentic way for our students to actually write for an audience and practice, and for us to celebrate and have children have a platform to share their ideas. I think that'll do it.
Wow, that's a lot. It all balances out, though. I'm going to the light side, the center myself tonight. We have 14 action items coming up to demand our attention. So at various times, you're going to see us struggling to maintain a balance here in the board world, where we try to be apolitical and just try to represent everyone in the best interest of students. And there's a challenge going on that you might be following down in Washington right now, where they will be trying to rewrite the tax code. And as it stands right now, New York State and California in particular are going to suffer a bit, in our opinion. So our job is to advocate for funding streams that are best for our students. In our opinion, and I'm really taking this from New York State School Board Association's latest journal, in our opinion, if New York State loses the deduction for state taxes, it's going to have a very dramatic effect on taxes in general. You would know more than that, Mr. Carlson. But it seems that that would not work for us at all. Districts like our own would suffer for sure. And when you consider the fact that has already been released, the retirement benefit contribution to districts is again going back up. It doesn't take a financial genius to understand that the bear market that we're in the middle of right now, we're probably past the middle in fact, isn't going to last forever. There's a dramatic forecast in the winds for 2018, to say the least. And it's going to make your job tougher, it's going to make the board's job tougher, because the financial picture is tightening up. So this comes more as a warning and an urge for you to do your own advocacy, to impress upon those who represent us from New York State to vote accordingly. And it's fortunate because in New York State, the representatives that we have and the senators that we have are very much supportive of keeping funding streams alive and well in support of our students. If the folks at home, you, encourage them, that will bode well for us. So please do that. We're joined tonight by Julie and Julia. Thank you for joining us. Looking forward to your update.
Last Tuesday, Democratic Congress hosted a convention for ELL students in the ILC. Over 100 students attended the event, with 18 groups facilitated by bilingual students. Some common suggestions were an after-school soccer club, a dance club, and for school announcements to be made in Spanish by actual native speakers. We learned that many students struggle in classes like health and science without a translator to help them. Next Tuesday, DEMO will be facilitating an abbreviated discussion on diversity for the high school faculty. We're hoping to start a dialogue as well as share our feedback from past conventions in order to strengthen our community. The spring musical, The Music Man, had its first interest meeting yesterday for students interested in being in the play, the pit orchestra, or stage crew.
Last week, Habitat for Humanity collected food items for the Putnam Cap Thanksgiving Food Drive at Public Market and Co-Backers. This Friday, there will be a festival of cultures at the high school at 6 o'clock. Groups like Step Team will be performing, educational workshops will be held, and transportation will be available to and from the event. Next month, Model UN is going to Columbia for their conference. The group has already selected members they'll send to represent, and they're working hard to prepare. Winter sports practices are beginning, and athletes are working hard and looking forward to the season.
Thank you both. And we move on now for our presentation of the evening, which is Mr. Barato and Ms. Gosh. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Dr. Jambor. As the board knows, at the October 10th Board of Education meeting, we had two individuals ask you to consider a potential football merger with North Salem. So as a result, under the Dean's leadership, we met with representatives of Brewster Youth Football in order to discuss all the available information that we had and what this would mean for Brewster. So this presentation is a summary of what we discovered. We'd like to thank the task force members who participated in this meeting, Mr. Niles being one of them. But as you can see, we have representatives from the district, especially our head varsity football coach, Mr. Mulvihill, as well as representatives of Brewster Youth Football. Okay, so before we can begin talking about implications for us, we really needed to gauge the interest of the other party, of North Salem and their administration. So Dr. Henry Piedmont spoke to North Salem Superintendent Dr. Prieston, who said flat out that at this time North Salem was not interested in any such merger with any district, not just Brewster. And another important note is that they currently do not have a football team. They had merged with John Jay Cross River in the past. That merger actually caused John Jay Cross River to go up to Class AA, which they wanted to avoid. So the North Salem currently has no active football team. So at this point, it's a non-starter for us, but what we wanted to do is our own due diligence, and Dean will walk us through that.
Thank you. So one of the considerations, enrollment, a lot of athletic things are determined by enrollment. So, and New York State doesn't only impact, Board of Education decisions for academics, they implicate and change things for athletics. So a lot of the mergers have a formula. So for next year, any team that wants to merge is going to calculate 100% of the enrollment. So essentially, while our enrollment in the past has been a percentage of 791 for Brewster and 295 for North Salem, next year everything will be calculated for 100%. In the past, you would take North Salem's number and use a 40% formula. So the BEDS numbers are always from the previous year's projected enrollments. And so if we combine the two numbers, simple math, we would be, since we're competing in Class A right now, and North Salem's in Class B, if we take the two numbers of 795 and 295, we're going to go up a class to AA. We're currently in A. What does that really mean for us? In A, you have teams, everybody's in a like conference. But in Class A, you may have, in football, you have three teams, you have essentially 3 units. You have an offense, a defense, and a special team. With Class AA enrollment, you may have 3 entirely groups of students or athletes participating in offense, defense, or special teams. In Class A, you may have some people sharing the responsibility on offense, sharing the responsibility on defense, and sharing the responsibility on special teams. And as a result, that would just put us into a different class of students, because essentially the bottom number of Class A goes to infinity. So you can start at the 900 or so number, but you can go, to a school that against an enrollment of 2,000 plus in a New Rochelle or North Rockland. So, so that's a concern of ours. Brewster Youth Football reports that their participation numbers are declining, and that is essentially our varsity and JV feeder program. So, our participation rate is going to has remained relatively the same for the past several years. So we had a little anomaly in oh, here it comes. Oh, it's bigger now. Good. So we're somewhere in the high 30s, low 40s. So we're fairly consistent. And as pointed out here, mergers are usually invested upon need. And we have a lot of players in our own program to sustain what we currently do. And Southeast Recreation, Mrs. Borman was very kind to help me with these numbers for the North Salem. Student athletes in North Salem at this time were in Brewster Youth Football. So grades 2 and 3, there's 1 player. Grades 4, 1 player. Grade 6, 1 player. And grade 7, 1 player. And we have, we don't have a substantiated number for people of athletes in North Salem High School at this time who are playing football. We're told an approximate number of 8 and 11, but that's still not a concrete enough for us to go on, but based upon Dr. Friesman's opinion, it's a moot point in some respect. So here are our final thoughts. We are engaged in mutually beneficial mergers, boys swimming and ice hockey, and skiing. We have some independents from Pauling who go with us. We also sought out an unsuccessful merger this year with girls swimming. We asked for some people to help us out because we have all the numbers and we couldn't find anybody to help us. Okay? So it's really not in our best interest to participate in Class AA football at this time. And then North Salem is not interested in participating in a football merger with us or any other district. However, we will monitor the enrollment and proactively seek mutually beneficial relationships for mergers as necessary.
Sounds fair enough. Comprehensive. And that detail there is very important. They don't have a football team.
Correct.
Kind of a prerequisite for a merger, isn't it?
Typically.
Usually the need is on both parties. It's you need a partner.
But thank you for treating this so seriously.
It's a serious topic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Thanks for the
Thank you.
commitment,
Thank you.
Mr. Niles.
Okay, the aforementioned action items with number 14 begin. Action item number 1, the approval of a contract for floor resurfacing pursuant to competitive bid. That would be Mr. Carlson, I'm sure.
Yes, this is for the JFK Elementary School gym. We want to resurface. Typically, we resurface floors every 10 to 15 years, and it's been quite some time since we resurfaced JFK with all the construction. That room is actually used as a storage area, so it's really in need of repair, and this is something we're going to do.
All right, I'll take some time then. We'll take a motion, please, for your consideration of this action item. Thank you, Glenn and Diane. Questions or comments from the board?
I just have one question, because I saw that there's a logo being put, I'm assuming that's the Bear logo?
Yes.
Okay, I figured I'd just double check.
Correct. Replaced in kind.
Well, sure.
You know?
The bear's still there.
I know, and this is how we're proving that the bear is still there.
Okay, sounds good. Other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion passes 5-0. Excellent. Action item number 2 is the rejection of a bid to dispose of district property vehicle cameras. Well, it's gonna take some explaining.
Yes, we put out a bid for some vehicles that we disposed of. We removed the cameras before we disposed of them and tried to bid them out independently. We received one response and it wasn't sufficient response. We're going to attempt to rebid them and hope that we get more competition.
Okay. Sounds like a plan. Take a motion, please, for your consideration of this action item. Mary Kay, you by yourself?
All by
tonight?
myself.
Well, so now that means you gotta look less
You
animated.
mean you have to go both ways? He's gonna get a sore neck
All
today.
right, Mary Kay and Diane, thank you both. Questions or comments concerning this action item? Seeing none, all those in favor, the motion passes 5-0. Action item number 3, approval of tax receivers reports and tax collection reassignment. Over to you again, Mr.
Yes,
Carlson.
this is an annual resolution where the town's turn over responsibility for the collection of unpaid taxes, and Putnam County assumes the responsibility, and they make us whole by April 1st.
Okay, sounds straightforward. Take a motion, please, from Kerry and Glenn. Thank you both. Questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, all those in favor, the motion passes 5-0. Action item number 4 relates to the authorization, excuse me, to establish additional bank accounts.
We're transitioning our operational accounts from Township Bay Pac National to Chase Bank. So at this time, we're requesting to open certain accounts at Chase Bank. We already established a relationship with Chase many, many years ago, so we already had some of our accounts open. We're now asking to open additional accounts that will complete the conversion, and then at a later date, we'll ask the board to approve the closure of the Tompkins Bank accounts.
Okay, take a motion, please, for your consideration of this action item. I saw your hand go up, Diane and Kerry. Questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, all those in favor? The motion passes 5-0. Speaking of number 5, action item number 5, the approval of budget amendment number 5 to recognize insurance expenditures and revenue.
A few years ago, we had a diesel fuel leak at one of our pumps at the transportation yard.
Right.
Whenever we have a leak, we have to file a spill report with the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, who has jurisdiction over that. We also, of course, file an insurance claim. We have a underground storage tank policy, and we filed a claim for that. This resolution is approving a budget amendment to recognize those expenditures and also to recognize the revenue that we're going to get in our insurance refund. So there's a net zero effect on our fund balance. It's just recognizing those revenues and expenses.
That's good to know. Okay. So we'll take a motion, please, for your consideration of this important action item. Thank you, Mary Kay, all by yourself, and thank you, Glenn. Questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, all those in favor, the motion passes 5-0. Action item number 6 concerns the declaration of emergency athletic fields work and approval of budget amendment number 6. This is what you talked about before. Okay, it's important. Actually, it's a nice shift in strategy. This should help us, I think.
It should, yes. It takes out one of the, or it achieves one of the approvals of the 3 regulatory agencies that we need to have.
Hope the others cooperate as well. Take a motion, please, for your consideration of this action item. Thank you, Diane and Kerry. Questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, all those in favor, the motion passes 5-0. Action item number 7 concerns the approval of change orders for CD Star General Construction. There are the numbers. That's for you too, I guess.
Yes, these represent the final 2 change orders for the CD Star addition project. As soon as these are approved, this will allow us to prepare our final cost reports, and that's important because once we submit our final cost reports, that begins the flow of building aid that assists us in paying off the debt on these buildings.
So once I sign these, we're turning a corner, huh?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. Take a motion, please, for your consideration of these very important change orders. Thank you, Glenn. Thank you, Kerry. Questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, all those in favor, motion passes 6-0. 5, sorry. I have half as many to get this right. Action item number 8, approval of the 2017-18 instructional service contracts for Dover, Carmel, Ed Incorporated, Greenberg Graham, and Four Winds Hospital, and these are annual, usually.
Yes, and of course, they've always been reviewed by our attorneys and
Yep.
Ms. Kennedy.
Understood. So we'll take a motion, please, for your consideration of this action item. Thank you, Diane. Thank you, Mary Kay. Questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion passes 5-0. Action item number 9, the approval of NYSERDA's standard workday reporting resolution.
Yes, this is a resolution that we pass annually, and it's to recognize the standard workday of elected and appointed employees, and we have one, which is our tax receiver, Susan Tobacco.
Okay, fair enough. Take a motion, please, for your consideration of this action item. Back over here with Kerry and Glenn. Questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion passes 5-0. Action item number 10 concerns the approval to separate from employee number 608 as per section 71 of the New York State Civil Service Law. That might be Ms. Carter.
This is a resolution to terminate an employee pursuant to the provisions of New York State Civil Service Law, Section 71.
Okay, thank you. Take a motion, please, for your consideration of this one. Thank you, Diane. Thank you, Glenn. Questions or comments from the board? This is a confidential matter. Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion passes 5-0. Action item number 11 concerns the approval of resolution to file Civil Service Section 75 disciplinary charges. Again, Ms. Culligan.
This is a resolution to approve Section 75 disciplinary charges against an employee as discussed in executive session on November 14th.
Thank you. Take a motion, please, for your consideration of this action item. Thank you, Kerry and Glenn. I got you next time, Diane. Questions or comments from the board concerning this?
It's a roll call vote.
This is a roll call vote. Thank you for noting that.
Okay, Ms. Cunningham, your vote?
To pass it, yeah.
Mr. Mass?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Nielsen? Yes. And Dr. Jambo?
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. Action item number 12 concerns, Ms. Gosh, more policies.
Perseverance, Dr. Jambo. These policies have been vetted by legal counsel and as appropriate recommended by the policy committee.
Okie dokie. You're going to miss these as much as I'm going to miss all the change orders. I'll take a motion, please, for your consideration of these policies. Got you, Mary Kay and Diane. Questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, all those in favor? The motion passes 5-0. Action item number 13 is the approval of overnight field trips. Wrestling trip to Cuyahoga Falls, Ohio. Wrestling trip to Chantilly, Virginia. And a Brewster High School trip to Iceland. Wowee.
Mr. Bronson.
Yes, these field trips are, they've been, of course, vetted by our attorneys whenever we
Right.
go overseas. It's a very lengthy review process, and I thank Ms. Horler and Mr. Schmidt and Ms. McCarthy for their commitment to this field trip. It's been over a year in the making, and I'll ask Ms. Horler if she wants to add any words.
Sure. The trip is scientifically based. It is all geothermal. Run Iceland. There's a trip to the Blue Lagoon, and the entire thing is coming from a science perspective, which is why I came out of the science department. Our biggest problems were, like Victor said, with our lawyers, you know, going back and forth, and there's policies that we have in place here in the United States that were sort of foreign to Iceland in general, because of their small population and their lack of crime. So, so that's a good thing. So, yeah, lack of crime.
No, because in season 5 of the Vikings, which begins tomorrow.
That's true. That's very true. Very
Let's
true.
go to Iceland.
So hopefully it should be a beautiful trip.
See how much fun you can have at a board meeting. Thank you. Okay, so you have that. We've got a lot of exciting trips coming up. Take a motion, please, for your consideration of them. Mary Kay and Glenn. Questions or comments from the board?
I hate to beat a track record, but I just, on the trip to Iceland, I'm sure, I think I know the answer, I just want to make sure. In the event, is insurance being purchased for the students, or what are we doing in case something has to, you know, something has to.
This trip is being handled in the same manner that the Spain and Italy trip was handled, in that the agreement is between the parents and the tour company. There is an offering of travel insurance, which is at the discretion of the parents. And when they hold informational sessions, they'll make sure to inform the parents the availability of this travel insurance.
Good. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Iceland's an awesome place. I was
Yeah.
there less than about a year and a half ago. Absolutely
Yeah.
magnificent, beautiful.
We should
So
be a chaperone.
excited. Yeah, that's what I was
We should be
thinking.
a
I'll go
chaperone.
back.
Other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion passes 5-0. Last but not least is number 14, the approval of agreement with Putnam County Department of Social Services.
Yes, this
It's
is
very popular today.
Yes, this is a resolution to recognize the settlement with PSS for foster care transportation.
Perfect. Okay, so we'll take a motion, please, for your consideration of this action item. Terry and Diane, questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, all those in favor, the motion passes 5-0. Turn the page, I bet you will find a consent agenda. Yeah, there it is. Okay, so while you're mulling that over, we'll take a motion, please, for your consideration of the consent agenda. Thank you, Diane. Thank you, Mary Kay. Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, the consent agenda is accepted 5-0. Remarks. Board remarks. BOE committee update.
Well, our policy committee got canceled.
Our policy.
So there's really nothing
It was
new
so
there.
disappointing, and it got canceled.
All that build-up, nothing to report.
No.
Are there other committees?
I have a couple things.
Sure.
I attended the Educated Palate at Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES, which is,
The culinary arts program.
it's the culinary program, but they likened it to, you know, when we see the championship football game,
Right.
this is their football game. They do
Yep.
this 3 or 4 times a year. There's a waiting list to get in, and, you know, again, this is one of the best events to see what these students are doing, and I have the pleasure, it really is a privilege, and while I represent, you know, all the districts, I kind of give a little rah-rah when I see a Brewster student at the culinary program. It's really exciting there. So that was the other day. I have a few things. I'm sorry. I'm going to... the Capitol Conference is coming up in February. I know I sent an email out. Do you have some more information? Do you want to share?
Well, it has a different venue this year, in the Museum of New York,
Mhm.
different hotel, and there should be more of a training focus for board people.
So it's not, it's usually, so there's a training portion, and then we spend a day on Capitol, do they call Capitol Hill in Albany? So,
Absolutely.
you know, meeting with legislators to get them to see who Brewster is, as well as say, please help us, give us more money, that kind of event. So that's coming up in February. I have the privilege also of attending a roundtable with the commissioner on December 8th. And the topic of the discussion is dual enrollment, students who are in high school taking college level classes. So we'll have a presentation on that, and then get to chat with the commissioner in the afternoon. So I'm not, you know, I'm excited, and I'm a little, I can't wait to see what this is
Going to
good.
be up in Latham?
Yes, up in Latham, and it's on the 8th, so that's pretty exciting.
Excellent.
From the legislator point of view, because as the legislator representative, whatever we're calling it, I found an article that the Putnam County legislatures, they had voted recently that they are banning styrofoam in their offices. They're now looking to do it countywide, banning styrofoam.
Because it only takes 1,000 years to dissolve.
That's right. So that's just an FYI that it is being discussed at the county level, that across all of Putnam County to get rid of styrofoam. So it hasn't happened yet, but that's what they're doing.
Okay.
Sonia asked, she graciously stayed home, so she didn't spend any of her germs here. But she asked that 2 things be brought up so the public is aware, that we will be finding dates for a retreat sometime in January to do board eval, board development, mid-year evaluations, as well as also dates to go over work session, agenda discussions, community outreach, et cetera. So I think what her point was just to let the public know that we're doing that, but we'll probably be picking dates through email.
Great.
So that's Sonia.
Well, that's a lot of good information.
That's enough.
Okay. Other comments from anyone else on the board? Seeing none, I think we're ready to have public remarks and information. Questions, comments from the public? That's okay. So that leaves us then with your special job.
My special job. Yes, we need to have an executive session to meet with council. We have personnel issues to discuss as well as real estate.
Correct.
Always exciting. So,
That's your motion. Will somebody second that? Thank you, Perry. All those in favor? Wave bye-bye to the folks at home. Okay.
I'm sure you